Welcome to another lesson. And I was asked to teach you how to draw in charcoal. So I'm going to do a small demonstration today. And the thing with charcoal is that the technique is quite different from pencil. So when I did the beginning of the bargue drawing last week, and I hope everybody saw that, when I did the beginning of the bargue drawing, the pencil had to be kept light and faint and so on. With charcoal is different. So I've already started the main outline, and if you want to learn how to do this, you have to watch last Sunday's lesson, because it's all there. And we just blocked in with some broad zigzags and loosely. This time I'm going to do in charcoal. So one thing I would like to show you straight away is that charcoal, sorry, I'm just maximizing this screen. Yeah, it looks half decent, the image. Charcoal is something, just framing this a little bit better. So charcoal is something that you can erase very easily. And the advantage of charcoal is that it's so soft that the putty rubber is going to take it out very, very easy to do. So a putty rubber essentially are these, they look like plastics. Sorry, I'm getting phone calls always during the live streams, that's something I can't answer. So there's always this kind of Play-Doh. And what I'd like to show you is that when you are erasing charcoal, you don't rub. So essentially you just press, so you tap and release. And that's going to lighten your outlines very, very, very easily. After a while, when the rubber gets dirty, you are meant just to reshape it again, and you have a brand clean putty rubber. So putty rubbers are not, they're not like throwaway, you just keep reusing and reusing and reusing until it's so dirty that you can't do anything else with it. So we're going to begin. I'm going to show you what you do when you have charcoal in your hands. This is Willow charcoal. Any brand will do. I'm using, let me just check. There went. Yeah, but any brand will do. There isn't really a difference between different kinds of willow charcoal. They're quite similar. And willow charcoal is very easy to erase. So that's the charcoal you want to use for charcoal drawings, essentially. Then you will need something that is called a compressed charcoal, which is much, much, much blacker. And a compressed charcoal you cannot really erase. So leave the compressed charcoal for the very last minutes of your drawing, just for accents, like blacker blacks. And the brand I'm using is this one. This is excellent. It's a Chinese make, Lontk. I don't know how to read this. And I just got it online, and I wrote soft charcoal because there was no description on the label. This is my absolute favorite brand for compressed charcoal. But I repeat, if you have compressed charcoal, you cannot really erase it. So leave this for the very last, okay? We're not going to use this in today's lesson. And compressed charcoal, you can sharpen it with a pencil sharpener. It's just like a pencil, You can sharpen it. And I repeat, it's very black. It's blacker than the willow charcoal, okay? You can't see on camera, but you'll have to believe on the image, And essentially, let's get started. So, charcoal drawing needs to be bold, okay? Needs to be, you shouldn't be afraid of doing this. In charcoal, you are going to ignore all the tones in between. You are going to paint everything black, pitch black. All right? So we're going to start, for example, this zigzag zig. I'm going to totally ignore subtleties, and literally I'm going to start making it quite black. So with charcoal, you're not afraid of making it quite black. Why? Because it's very easy to erase. So even if you do mistakes, it's super, super easy to correct them. So we've got already a block. And then I'm going to do a little demonstration for you to see what you do with that. Actually, I forgot a brush. Let me just get a brush. Give me a second, okay? Apologies for the interruption. Okay, I'm back. So with this type of charcoal drawings, you should use very fluffy brushes. One type of brush that is quite cheap and they're perfect are these cheap makeup brushes, you know, very, very soft, very fluffy. They don't cost any money. They're like so inexpensive compared to art suppliers. And what you can do with this type of brushes is that you can go into the charcoal and you start smearing edges and creating lights. So I'm actually going to bring the camera a little bit nearer so that you can see. And that's going to be an operation. I've got everything tied up. All right. So I think you'll be able to see a little bit better. Yes, this will do the trick for now. Okay. And when you have this type of soft charcoal, you can very, very, very easily work with the brush and also work with the eraser. So I'm going to block all this section without fear, and I'm going to show you what's going to happen. So this can be quite black, this can be quite black. There's a kind of an horizontal there. This is going to be black too. I totally ignore all of these different tones. I hope I'm not covering the lens. And just as a very quick demonstration, then you come with the brush and you start cleaning up. And by cleaning up, you'll actually produce nicer grays than if you just used the brush. Sorry, than if you just used the charcoal lightly. Because the smudginess is just so much nicer, and it kind of takes some of the texture away, and it's easier to create blendings, and you work with a very, 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 very soft brush. And then you clean it again, and you keep removing. And then if you have to remove more, you can always go back with the putty rubber and clean it even further. Does that make any sense? Now, this is just the very beginning, first layer. Eventually this will have to be fixed, and then you will have to put some more. But I'm going to keep on cleaning. There you go. This is the very, very, very beginning of the bark drawing. The very, very beginning. And now what you do, you come with the putty rubber and you start redefining some of the edges again, because it's easy for them to get a bit smeared. So see in here, it's very easy to redefine the edge. Super easy. So you start cleaning the shape. You start dotting in areas where you want to go a little bit lighter, but not too much. So you start creating light grays. And then, so you just dot lightly. And now I've got a request to ask you. In the bark drawing technique, everything that belongs in the light areas, we are going to leave light for now, very light. So lighter than what we want it to be, if this makes any sense. So I'm going to erase this ever so slightly because I want it lighter than what I have in the original. I'll deal with the mid-tones later. So for the time being, this is meant to stay quite light, because we want a clean cut between light and shadow, if that makes any sense. So let's exaggerate the cut between light and shadow for the time being. Now, as you carry on, we are going to do exactly the same. So you're going to block in with pitch black, and then you're going to smoothen it with the brush, with a soft brush. So it's all about blocking in, blocking in, blocking in. Ignore details at this stage. I'm using a paper that is a little bit like sandpaper, but it's finer than that. It's made by an Australian company. I quite like it. It's not my favorite paper, but it's a good paper for charcoal. Okay, there we go. So again, block in and get zig and zag, and later you can reshape it with a putty rubber. So like I said before, charcoal is not for the timid. You have to be quite bold. And then later you start reshaping things. So for example, here there's a zig missing that we are going to bring slightly down. Does this make sense? So you are gradually going to change the shapes and make them more and more accurate. So for the time being, this is just a start. For example, here, this zigzag is not convincing, so you can go raise this ever so slightly and then change the angle there so it becomes a little bit more accurate. This zig is wrong, this is a curve, it shouldn't be. So I'm going to drop this more vertically, if this makes any sense. Sorry, I'm getting phone calls from which interrupts the live stream. So essentially, exactly the same in here. You have to raise this and drop that way. All right? So here too, you can start breaking the zig and then the zag. So you're starting to play with the shape to get it a little bit more accurate, because the initial draft was just too blocky. It was just like a start. The same here. You can start bringing the angles further out. And remember, just block it black. If there is no reason to be... I'm getting recurrently phone calls, and that creates a huge problem. Can everybody still see me and hear me? Please type if you can. Because at this stage, I don't know if the connection is still on. So, let's carry on in here. I'm going to keep blocking. Totally ignore any sort of shapes, any sort of subtleties. So you want to make sure that you are just getting the block color, okay? And just block it in. Don't create subtleties at this stage. Then you've got, so gradually I'm going to pull the camera a little bit further, because now we have a little bit more context, so you can start seeing better what's going on. Let me just pull this way. It just seems to be constantly tilting. It's very crooked. I don't know why. God. Ah, now I got it. Okay. I think now it's going to be slightly better. So, like I was saying, by the way, this is important. All the live streams are always on Facebook. I'm not doing live streams on YouTube. Jen, I just saw your message now. The live streams are on Facebook, not on YouTube at the moment. And the problem is that I'm using my phone to do the live streams. So whoever calls me actually interrupts the live stream. So please, it's always on Facebook, okay? As announced every session. So I always announced it as being live streams on Facebook. In the future, I'm hoping to hold live streams on YouTube as well, together with Instagram and all the platforms, okay? But at the moment, it's just on Facebook. So let's get this clear. Now, can you guys still hear me? And can you guys still see me? Just to make sure. Please type if you can hear me and see me. And please make sure, guys, please don't call me during the live streams because I'm using my phone, all right? I can't answer the phone if I'm giving a lesson. So I was, where was I? I was about to show you that you need to work with block color and ignore all the subtleties, just go black. So at this stage, you are going to ignore any sort of halftones or midtones. And like I was saying before, don't bother yet with little subtleties. Later on, I'm going to show you how to use the charcoal so sharp that you can actually draw the finest details. That's not going to be for this stage, okay? Now, next step, and this is only an introduction. Next step, you have two ways of lightening the charcoal. One way I already taught you, which is with a fluffy brush. I quite like this process. You just erase slightly with the brush. Another way is by blowing really strongly, but it doesn't work with all sorts of papers. So it worked with this one. And again, I don't know if you can see on camera because the difference is subtle, but I got a slightly lighter shade of gray just by blowing in that section. So this is as light as I can get just blowing. Because I want it even a little bit lighter, I'm just going to start smearing ever so slightly the surface. And by using this really soft brush, it's very easy to do. Very easy. And you can even start pulling some of the lighter tones at this stage. So remember, keep them simple. You just want an indication of what's to come. So classical art is all about layering and patience. So you're not going to jump straight into the bold things because you don't have the practice yet. And the better you get, the faster you become, and then the more you can do with your technique. And then you can be bold, yes, but not when you are still training to become an artist. So I just want to do one thing here. I think the image this time is clearer than in the past because I'm using a stronger Wi-Fi connection, so I hope you can see in better quality than the previous live streams. And the next stage is I'm going to totally ignore all of this lower part of the foot because there isn't time today to deal with this. You know, I'd rather explain you just a section and more finely, nicer, so that you don't lose what you were about to see. Simplification. So at this stage, no details whatsoever. Just work with block colors. All right? You just work with blocks. And then later you are going to create all the other tones. I'm repeating this on purpose several times so it becomes part of you. So you start understanding. They say that people have to hear something about 8 or 9 times until it stays in the memory, until it sticks in the memory. So I don't know if that's true, but I believe it is. If you have any questions at this stage, please type them in, because you won't have time at the end of the lesson. I usually just switch off and then there is no way to ask anything. So please type them in order for me to reply next week, because I can't read the questions at the moment. I'm too far away from the screen, you know. So there we go. Now, next stage. Start separating more clearly everything that belongs to the real darks from the medium gray shadows. So everything that is medium gray shadows, let's assume that it belongs to the light at this stage, okay? Exaggerate that difference. So you remember here? How would you lighten it? So please write down which are the two methods I've taught you of lightening with charcoal. Please write them now. I will check later if your answers are correct. So you remember? There are two methods apart from the eraser. So I'm not talking about the putty rubber at the moment. There are two ways of erasing charcoal. Please write it down. And I want to see afterwards who got the answer right. So here's the dark color. I hope you wrote already. Write it down. And I'm going to do it. Don't change your answers. So first I lighten it by blowing it, and then I lighten it by cleaning a bit more with the brush. Does this make sense? And I'm going to start blurring a bit some of the edges. Although at this stage it doesn't really matter this type of subtleties, because we are going to rework everything again. Now, back to blacks for the time being. I want to make sure that there's a zig and then a zag, because that was lost while I was erasing. I have to make sure there's always a very clear structure of zigzags. It's very, very easy to slip into curves again. It's just human nature, you know, so remember not to do that. Keep pushing back to the zigzags throughout the whole process. Now, another thing I would like to show you at this stage is that, oh, by the way, if this is the type of lesson that your friends benefit from, please type their names now, you know, so that they can start seeing, as always. Because we're having problems, usually at 7 p.m. people are still walking around and blah, blah, blah. If you don't write down their names, they're probably going to miss this, you know, because I'm not paying for advertisement. It's going to be organic growth. So if you write their names on, then they will be able to see the live stream once it's over. Now, back to where we were. It's time now to start blending a little bit further the lights into the darks. And at this stage, you can use hatching, so you can use some sort of line work, and then later you are going to use dot picking. When I say later, it's not going to be in today's lesson. It's going to be on a future, you're going to sharpen the charcoal so much that it becomes like a needle. And then you are going to start dot picking inside of the grooves of the texture of the paper. Like I announced last week, so this is just a rough beginning of a bark drawing, very rough. I could work on this for about 4 or 5 hours to bring it to perfection, perhaps a little bit less, maybe in 3 hours, a rough start. I'd say 5 hours at least, to get this barg more complete. And in order to be really, really complete, you can easily spend 20, 30 hours, you know, but we don't have to. Like I announced last week, and this is something I would like you all to remember, I'm just about to release a full barg drawing from beginning till end and in very high resolution. I just also created, thanks for everybody for being supporting me so far. I will still continue with some free videos every Sunday. That's not an issue, you can still learn. But I received a lot of messages from you guys, and thanks to you, I've created a Patreon account that then you can support me, and there's different brackets, you know. It starts as little as £5 a month. But like I said before, you can still have the free lessons on Sundays for the time being. I will still carry on. But the Patreon account is going to be higher resolution videos, more in detail, and from beginning till end. And there's even a chance of one-to-one tutoring or Zoom courses, you know, with people, and I can see your art and give feedback, etc. So let us carry on. At the moment, what I see here is always spend more time correcting shapes than actually correcting shadows. Look, shadows have a shape, correct? This is something that we discussed last week, in last week's lesson. Always get the shape of the shadow right. And shadow shapes are more important than the actually values of light and shadow, how dark you can go or how light. You can still paint with very faint colors. As long as the shadow shapes are correct, it will still look relatively 3D. Of course, that it's even stronger if you get, you know, if you get a kind of intense shading. So I'm going to step back at the moment, and I'm going to look at some of my shapes. And I'm really not happy with this corner here. I don't like this shape at all. So what am I going to do? Fill in this shape as black. Ignore that. Correct? Bring the shadow shape slightly higher because it was too low. And then how do you lighten? With a soft brush. So now you can start lightening. And you can start, if you want, you can start blurring slightly the edges. Not that it matters at this stage, but sometimes it's nice to have a clearer, blurrier feeling together with sharp shapes. So let me reinstate again the black shape because it's gone. And the next step, although today's lesson is going to be abridged because there is no way I can carry on much further. I'm compressed between the camera and the paper. I can't even step back. So remember, when you draw, and when you draw from life or from this type of templates, you know, like the Bargue Drawing, always step back quite a lot so you can see the differences from far away. Another trick that you can do is that you can use a mirror, you know, so you can always revert the thing into the mirror. Now, let me carry on, and then I'll do questions and answers. Again, with the brush, I'm going to gently lighten that section there. First, I make it wider, because the shape isn't right. I'm going to bring this out a little bit more, and get the zigzag back. Okay, I'm a little bit more pleased. And then next step, lighten ever so slightly the edge and this upper corner. I absolutely love working with charcoal and then the brush, because it creates very beautiful effects. You know, it's very easy to be painterly with charcoal if you use the brush to then smear the color around. So I'm still not happy with this. Remember, everything that is light gray, assume that it's lighter than what it really looks like. So I'm going to lighten this even further. I want to make sure that this stays in the lights at the moment. We are not yet doing the finicky halftones. Okay, I'm much more pleased with that. And then, of course, I'm still going with the rubber and create even lighter sections up here because it's still kind of dark. So always assume that the light grays are going to be lighter than what they seem. All right? Never create heavy lights, and never paint pale shadows. If the context is meant to be dark, then it needs to get dark. I would like to say one more thing, which is your hands will start getting a little bit dirty and so on. That's not really an issue because charcoal is so easy to erase that even, look, there's a line there, and generally you can just erase everything. As a quick reminder, you have to use soft rubbers. Who wasn't at the beginning of the lesson, you can rewatch this again. Just use soft rubbers, putty rubbers, so you don't damage the paper. And charcoal cannot be erased with the normal hard, the latex rubbers. It's not going to work. So the eraser must be very soft, must be a putty rubber, something of this kind. I'm just about to stop for today because I think it's time to answer some questions. And if you have questions, please type them now. I'm going to quickly have a look. So allow me, I'm just going to be away for a split second. And I've got... Okay, so Elizabeth, you asked what paper I'm using. And this is like a sandpaper. I'm going to get you a bottle just to show you something. Give me 10 seconds. I'll be chattering from a distance so you guys don't get bored. But this is the most wonderful... Okay. So you asked me what paper I'm using, and this is the primer. Well, this kind of paper, it's already primed from the factory. It's called Art Spectrum, and the name is Color Fix. So it's for pastels, for charcoal. It's like sandpaper, you know. So when I touch it, it's kind of gritty. It's not my very favorite one for charcoal. I much prefer a company called UArt. But that will be described in the long course that I'm going to do about the Bargue technique. So I'm going to cover all sorts of papers to use, all sorts of materials, different brands, etc. That will be all compared in the full course on Patreon. But I'm using at the moment Art Spectrum Color Fix. But one thing I would like to also say is that you can buy just a primer. So this is a liquid. See? Can you hear it? And then you can prime your own papers yourself. And when they dry, you get this kind of sandpaper that you can use charcoal on top. I find Color Fix slightly slippery. There isn't really a deep black that I can achieve with this kind of Color Fix. That's why I prefer UArt. UArt is much, much, much blacker, you know, with the charcoal. But the thing with Color Fix is that you give a first layer and then you fix it with Fixative, and then you can apply a second layer to reinforce the color if you would like to. So there's always a way out, you know. But in terms of papers, I believe UArt to be much superior. But now you know, okay? So Color Fix by Art Spectrum, and you can also buy the primer yourself. Let me check if there's any more questions as well. So I've got... No. There's lots of hellos. Hi, everybody. And there's no other questions. That's very strange. Are you sure you don't have any questions at all? Do you know everything? Wow. You know, the hallmark of a good student is to have questions. If you don't have questions, I'm worried. I'm very worried. It means you're just passively taking in what you are listening. You have to challenge me. You have to... Come on, guys. Last week, I've mentioned this. I have to mention this again. Train your mind. Train your mind to push further, okay? Train your mind to go way beyond. Don't just sit passively on your home and watch these lessons. That's not good enough. You have to push your mind. So I want you to be more intellectual. I want you to be more inquiry, all right? More questions. Elizabeth. Oh, and Helen, yes, I will put a link later. Actually, I don't remember. I'm not very good with business for the Patreon. But ask me questions about drawing, all right? Sorry for telling you off, but I believe we are too commodified at the moment. I'm on a mission here. The mission is to bring back classical technique, but classical technique cannot be brought back if you don't get the classical way of thinking. Does this make sense? It's not just a technique. It's actually an approach to life. Huh? Questions. I want questions. If you don't give me questions, I'll be very, very, very upset. So, like I was saying before, and I'm just about to wrap up the lesson, there is a kind of a charcoal that is called Nitram. And, oh, Francesca, when you ask me about liquid charcoal, do you mean also by Nitram? Because that's actually a gouache paint. They call it liquid charcoal, but it behaves like a watercolor. It's just charcoal powder mixed with gum arabic. And Helen, you asked me, I already mentioned the paper. I don't know the paper. And ask for charcoal, is it standard? Do not see the outline being drawn. Yeah, because you missed the beginning of the lesson. So I already had an outline drawn. And I just started the lesson today directly onto the shading. The first layer of shading. This is not finished at all. And Nitram, it's a type of charcoal. I personally don't like it. It's very scratchy when you work with Nitram. Let me get a box for you, okay? Today I'm just in and out. I'm not filming in my studio. I actually filmed outside because there's much better internet connection here. But give me 10 seconds, and I'll be back with a box of Nitram. Right, so these are Nitram charcoals. They come in different ranges, so you've got H, HB, B. You already know H stands for hard, HB is medium, and B is the black one, so it's the soft one, all right? And Nitram can be made super sharp, and it becomes like a needle. So we are going to use Nitram towards the completion of the drawing. Now, in a lot of art ateliers, they will tell you to use Nitram from beginning till end. I personally don't agree with that. I think it's a mistake. I think it keeps you longer in the course, so you're paying by the week, really, and after a month or two, you end up with one drawing. I've been there, I've seen it. That's exactly how they make their money. And Nitram is so expensive compared to standard Willow charcoal. You know, Willow charcoal is so much cheaper that I don't see the reason for using Nitram on the first layer of a drawing. And so, Francesca, like I said before, the liquid charcoal that Nitram sells, thanks for telling me, it's nothing more than a black watercolor paint. Nothing special. I find it overpriced. So back to these Nitrams. I'm just going to open a box for you. They're nicely packaged. Well, for the price you pay, they should be. So these are the Nitram sticks. As you can see, they're cubic. All right. And then you sharpen them with sandpaper, so you create a needle-like tip. It's like a needle. It's going to be as sharp as the sharpest pencil. And then you can go in with a very sharp tip and start filling in all the details, including the inside of the grain of the paper, okay? To remove excessive texture. Let me check if there are any other questions. Angela asked about DIY materials. What does that mean? I don't understand. Can you be more specific, Angela? What do you mean by DIY materials and in which context? Is it about the primer? Is it about the charcoal? They don't sell charcoal in DIY shops, but there will be... Now, more questions here. Katingo. Yes, you can use all sorts of mediums on this paper because this paper is primed with it's a kind of an acrylic ground. It will take acrylic paint. I haven't tested this paper in depth for watercolor, but it takes watercolor, it takes gouache paint, acrylics. I don't recommend you use it for oils though, because you should never paint with oils on paper. It's going to rot the painting eventually, you know? So, oh yes, Angela, you asked me about the fixative, if you can do a DIY fixative. Absolutely. Yes, you can. They're not going to be great though. But if you dissolve shellac flakes on something like methylated spirits or alcohol, you know, I don't know how to say in English. It's like 100% pure alcohol, not vodka. It's purer than that. You can dissolve shellac varnish, and you make a very, very thin solution of shellac varnish, and then you use it to spray the drawing. And that was the fixative that was used in the 19th century when the Bargue courses were being developed, you know. So you've got this kind of fixative made from shellac. Now remember that shellac is the poo of an insect, okay? So if you are vegan or whatever, yeah, I'm not lying. You can write your expression. Actually, please click now the wow box on the like button, you know, because I'm going to say it again. No, it's not white spirit, Angela. It's not with white spirit. It's with alcohol. White spirit is something else. White spirit is more similar to gasoline, you know. We're not talking that. I'm talking about alcohol itself, the substance alcohol. Ethylic, do you say in English? Ethylic alcohol? It's not just methylated spirits, but you can also use methylated spirits. Now, I'm going to repeat this again. Shellac is the poo of an insect. More specifically, the female insect that lives in the forests of Malaysia and parts of India. Ethanol, I think ethanol is correct. Thank you very much, because in Portuguese we use different names. Thanks, Sa. So, shellac is literally the feces of an insect, and then the branches of the trees that are infested with that insect, they cut the branches, they warm them up, and that poo starts dripping and drip, 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 drip into a bucket, and they fill up the bucket from that poo, and then it's purified. I don't know exactly what they do to it. They de-wax it. I don't know how it's done, but I know that shellac needs to be de-waxed. And then essentially you have crystals, and that's shellac varnish. And that's exactly the material that ladies used to use, or gentlemen used to use to paint their nails with. The poo of an insect. So Angela, this was a very long answer to a short question. Nowadays, there are better fixatives. If you buy your own from the art shop, it's going to be much superior quality. It's essentially an acrylic resin. And the advantage of those fixatives is that they don't yellow over time. They don't change color. One more thing about fixatives, you can make a wonderful one from casein. So casein is the milk protein. It's almost like doing curd. There's a formula to it which I can supply later if you guys want. It's a lot of work. You buy casein crystals, you soak them in water. They're not going to dissolve. Then you need to add something like borax, which I believe is now forbidden in the UK, if I'm not mistaken. So it might be an issue to get the materials to make casein. And when you add the borax into that water with casein crystals and you stir it hot, the crystals immediately swell up and they become like gelatin. And then into the warm water, so you keep it warm and you keep stirring, it becomes this kind of jelly. Then you add more water and more alcohol. You add isopropyl alcohol or something so that your fixative doesn't rot, because casein comes from milk. The bugs are going to eat it, the bacteria are going to eat it, and you need to add some alcohol to disinfect. Another reason is that when you spray paper, if the fixative is water-based, the paper is going to buckle quite a lot. Needs to have some alcohol as well to make sure that it dries quickly. So I'm going to check if there's more questions. And I've got no more. I'm back here. White spirits. Okay. So I think there's no more questions. Thank you very much for attending this lesson. If you have any more questions, it's time to join again. Just write them down. And I want to say one more thing, which is, I think we're back online. You use borax to make glazes. Oh, you mean in ceramics, Janet? So the glazes in ceramics, because in a fine art context, if you say glazes, people assume that it's in oil paint or acrylics. So it's glazes in ceramics. There was just a quick cut on the internet connection. If that happens, just restart your the page and my video will come, because it's on my mural. It's just a matter of restarting it, okay? Just click again the address and enter, and immediately you're brought back into the video. So, like I said before, I just want to leave you with some last announcements. This week, I'm starting to release that in-depth course of the Bargue Technique, and that's going to be through Patreon. It's going to be very high-quality courses. Now, in order to get more information about this, because I'm limiting the number of places initially, I'm going to limit in order to have Zoom calls where I can see the progress of your work. If you want more information about this, you have to subscribe to my website. You have to subscribe. If you don't subscribe, I cannot send you more information about this course. And like I told you before, it starts for as little as £5 a month. That's ridiculous. That's like nothing. And it can go all the way up to 2,500 a month if you want to receive original commissions by me, etc. But I will still continue with some free lectures on Sundays. Don't worry if you cannot pay. I'm a socialist at heart, in the sense that I believe that if you have money, you should contribute. If you don't have money, you should not contribute. Okay? Let's be very democratic and very even on this. So please make sure you go to my website. If you live in the UK, just subscribe, or in America or English-speaking countries. If you come from an English-speaking country, just go to www.nelson-ferreira, my last name, .com. I'm going to write on the description of this video once the video is over. And just subscribe. For Portuguese speaking students, do not subscribe, because my mailing list is for English speakers. For Portuguese speaking students, go to my website and send me a message, a personal message with your email, and I will add you to a different list. Okay, I'll repeat. Portuguese students, do not subscribe on my website, www.nelson-ferreira.com. Instead, drop me a message and I will add you manually to a different list that I have for the lessons in Portuguese. Okay? So I'm going to leave you now. Please tag your friends and share this video as much as you can. I really want to make sure you understood that stage 1 in charcoal is different from stage 1 in pencil. In pencil, you are meant to keep everything faint and delicate, and you gradually build into the darks. As in charcoal is the opposite. You start bold, and then you erase by blowing, or with a soft brush, which is now there on my seat. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Let me see if there's any last minute question. Thank you so much. Oh yeah. Okay, brilliant. I don't think there's any more questions at the moment. So like I said, please tag now your friends so they can see your that you've tagged them. They will be able to see these videos afterward. I still don't see anyone tagged. Don't be too private, okay? Make sure that you spread the word. So during the long course that I'm about to release this week, I'm going to release it in English and in Portuguese. So please also tell your Portuguese, Brazilian, Angolan, Mozambican friends, you know, from Macau, East Timor, so Portuguese-speaking countries, Guinea, Saint Tomé and Prince, Cape Verde. I'm sure you have lots of friends that also speak Portuguese, and they can watch the tutorials at 8:30 p.m. Okay? I'll see you next Sunday at exactly the same time, 7 p.m. UK time, every Sunday. And I am sorry for the delay today. I was doing the live stream, but I forgot to make it public. I was doing it private, which is really silly of me. And that's why a few of you couldn't log in. All right? So you take care, guys. And please tell now your Portuguese friends that I'm about to start a live stream in 30 minutes. Bye for now. Bye-bye. Look at the charcoal hands, huh? This is how painters should look. You take care. Bye-bye.